Welcome to you all to this high-level European Union-Africa Green Investment Forum. I'm your host. My name is Paulo Dintinho. Although we cannot convene an in-present situation here in Lisbon due to the urgency of this matter, it unites us. It's true we are still fighting for our lives due to a worldwide virus, but that fight will be useless if we don't have a safe planet to live in. And by this, I mean achieving the goals of the Paris Agreement, this common worldwide challenge to fight climate change. Let's put it in perspective. Last year, 1 month after the OMS declares the pandemic, with factories shutting down across the globe, the quality of the air that we breathe has improved, a glimpse that it's possible to recover into a better and safe planet. In 2020, carbon fossil emissions have dropped 5% compared with 2019, but that's almost nothing compared to the task that we must face. Sadly, if we really want to reduce the rising of Earth temperature to 5% in the next 10 years, in order to achieve the objectives of the Paris Agreement, we would need a COVID-19 crisis each year. Let's hope it won't happen. But that doesn't mean that we still don't need to find the best ways to achieve those goals to change the rising of temperature, therefore reducing significantly carbon emissions to the atmosphere. This week, a cornerstone has been reached by the European Union to fight climate change. Policymakers have made an agreement which would enshrine the EU's climate goals into law, thus reducing to a net 55% cut in their emissions by 2013. It's the first European climate law. And this forum, organized by the Portuguese presidency of the Council of the European Union and the European Investment Bank, is certainly another big contribution to it. The idea here is to share experiences and innovative approaches to mobilize private and public capital to support a green transition in Africa and Europe, and to find the ways to get into a green and sustainable business model, profitable with the capacity to create jobs and wealth. Time has come to invest in new projects in Africa and Europe within the framework of the Paris Agreement. We can do it. With us today, we will have the contributions of the President of the European Union, Ursula von der Leyen, the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, the President of the African Development Bank, Akinwumi Adesina, among several others. We will start with a pre-recorded message from Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations.
It is a pleasure to greet this EU-Africa Green Investment Forum organized by the Portuguese Presidency of the European Union and the European Investment Bank. As the world works to address the COVID-19 pandemic, combat the existential threat of climate change, and accelerate our efforts to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, your gathering is an opportunity to strengthen partnerships and boost investment in Africa for the benefit of all. Africa faces fast-growing demand for industrial and domestic energy consumption while seeking to promote sustainable development and implement Agenda 2063. The European Union has pledged to align its pandemic recovery with an enhanced climate target for 2030 and to no longer fund fossil fuel infrastructure abroad. I see agendas converging around financing a green transition and greater resilience. Several African countries are rapidly scaling up renewables, particularly solar and wind power. This momentum needs to be accelerated through investment in 4 key areas. First, coupling job creation with green technologies. Renewable energy provides a growing number of jobs, and this number will grow. Developing the technical capacities of Africa's women and young people for these new jobs would simultaneously tackle unemployment and the climate crisis. Second, creating incentives for industry to transition to green energy solutions. Africa is the richest continent in solar resources. It has received only 2% of global renewable energy investments in the past decade. Third, investing in adaptation resilience. This is crucial for protecting development gains and ensure equitable prosperity over the long term. I've asked bilateral and multilateral donors to ensure that 50% of all public climate finance be dedicated to adaptation and to ease access to finance, and this is long overdue. Fourth, investing in startups and providing risk guarantees for private investments. Climate action is a $3 trillion investment opportunity in Africa by 2030, and I see the European Union as a key partner for the continent. I look forward to working closely with you as we promote green investments in Africa. Please accept my best wishes for a fruitful forum, and I thank you.
Let's keep in mind these 4 key areas that the Secretary General of the United Nations has pointed out to tackle this climate crisis in Africa. And now, our first speakers for the opening session, the President of the European Investment Bank, Werner Hoyer, and the Portuguese Minister of State and Foreign Affairs of Portugal, Ministro Santos Silva. You have the floor.
So good morning, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear participants. I would like to start by thanking all of you for your presence and participation on this very important EU-Africa Green Investment Forum. It is organized by the Portuguese Presidency of the Council of the European Union and European Investment Bank. This Green Investment Forum is the closing event of 30 days of dialogue. These dialogues were held, these green talks were held on different European and African capitals, and its aim was to discuss and to exchange experiences on transition and green investment. I hope the discussions today will be as fruitful as this last month was. Today we join experts from both continents sharing knowledge and practice to learn together as we move forward in this common challenge of building a greener economy. We share a multi-dimensional and decisive challenge. The world struggles with a global pandemic and economic crisis, and at the same time, the world must step up the response to climate change. It is against this backdrop that we must enhance the dialogue between Europe and Africa. A dialogue as a real partnership between both continents, a partnership driven by common interests and goals, building together a more prosperous, clean and resilient future. Green transition is an enormous opportunity for job creation and sustained economic growth that will allow for reducing inequalities. For Africa and for Europe, this is also an opportunity for fostering our economic potential through green and sustainable investment. Adequate incentives to the private sector are key for the creation of sustainable business models that can generate wealth and jobs. The EU has set very ambitious targets for itself, namely to become climate neutral by 2015. The European Union is committed to financing global climate action and working with partners in order to adopt resilient and sustainable development models. This week, under the Portuguese presidency, the European institutions, the Council, the European Parliament, the European Commission, reached the necessary political agreement on the very first climate law in Europe and in the world, putting binding commitments to our climate action. We also have to acknowledge that Africa carries little responsibility, very little responsibility for greenhouse emissions. And Africa is, on the other side, one of the regions that are most affected by the consequences of climate change. We have to address this paradox. This is an unfair reality that must bring us together to strive for a balanced, fair and inclusive post-pandemic recovery. We hope that this forum investment, this Green Investment Forum between the European Union and Africa constitutes a milestone. It will pave the way to the next European Union-African Union Summit, and it will reinforce green transition as a top priority of the partnership between Europe and Africa. The Charter for a Greener Future in Africa and in the European Union delivered by the organizers of this forum translates our engagement in working together on all the dimensions of sustainable development: economic, social, and environmental dimensions. Portugal, of course, will remain committed to enhance the partnership between Europe and Africa that we consider as decisive for the future and sustainable growth of our two continents. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister, for your contribution. Our next speaker is the President of the European Investment Bank, Werner Hoyer. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Minister, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues. On behalf of the European Investment Bank, it is a great pleasure to welcome you here today. And I thank the Portuguese hosts for the enormous hospitality extended to all of us. It's a pleasure also to be back to Lisbon. It has been a privilege for the EIB to work alongside the Portuguese presidency of the Council of the European Union in putting this forum together. And when we organized it, we would not know whether the Portuguese presidency would really drive in this huge success this week in Brussels by getting Council, Parliament, and Commission together on a binding legislation on climate, the first one ever. Congratulations, Minister. Today's event is the culmination of a month-long series of green talks, where, under the leadership of the Portuguese presidency, we have engaged in 25 conversations organized in different locations, from Addis Abeba and Harare to Dakar and Maputo, from Rome to Helsinki. These green talks, with the participation of civil society, the private sector, academics, and practitioners, will guide our discussions today. Also on this, thank you, Minister, for your crucial support. Ladies and gentlemen, it is no exaggeration to state that we have entered the make or break decade for our planet's future and to meet the Sustainable Development Goals. We know that if we do not prioritize climate action, the consequences will be disastrous. We have little time to act. This would be a difficult task at the best of times. But the COVID-19 pandemic only makes it much more difficult. Each of the steps we take during the recovery will dictate whether we will be successful in the long run. One thing is clear: success in this process requires buy-in at a global level, and the renewed commitment of the US on climate is certainly good news. Never have global partnership been more important. The European Union's Team Europe response to the pandemic has shown that by working together, the European Union can produce swift and effective solutions. The European Investment Bank, as the EU bank, has played its role in this team with great pride. I look here at the example of the COVAX program to ensure fair and equitable access to vaccines worldwide. The EIB committed funds to COVAX last December thanks to the support of the European Commission. We are now in the process of scaling up financing. So far, COVAX has delivered vaccines to more than 100 countries, and with additional funding could provide vaccines of up to nearly 30% of the population of countries concerned. That's not enough, but it's a great first step. We must also now apply these lessons and this spirit to climate change, the most significant long-term threat facing humanity today. At the EU Bank, the priority in Africa over the past years has been to help reduce poverty by supporting private sector development and to invest in the vital infrastructure to enable businesses to flourish. As the European Union's Climate Bank, we're putting our financing to work in favor of the Green Deal, or our lending activities are Paris-aligned. We will increase the share of our climate action to 50% of our total operations by 2025, and we will mobilize 1 trillion euros in climate investment by 2030. That's quite ambitious. The EIB is not new to this. As the financing arm of the EU, the EIB has been investing in projects in Africa for almost 60 years. In 2020, we invested 5 billion euros in the continent. Ladies and gentlemen, Africa may be the continent that is most vulnerable to the immediate effects of climate change, but is responsible for some of the lowest greenhouse gas emissions per head. It is also the continent where mistakes made elsewhere can be avoided. Africa can invest into the innovative technologies and make the right choices for a sustainable and inclusive future. What we must learn from this pandemic is it is not about simply rebuilding. It's rebuilding better, preparing ourselves for a safer future. The potential for energy generation from renewable resources in Africa is enormous. At the EIB, with our partners, we have financed many projects in these fields. The Ouarzazate solar complex in Morocco is enormous, producing enough electricity to power a city of 350,000 inhabitants. The Luke Turkana wind farm in Kenya is on a similar large scale. In Gambia, the EIB, the World Bank, and the European Commission are supporting a solar energy program that includes a power plant and distribution lines, but also includes a component to provide off-grid solar for rural healthcare facilities and schools. The European Union is a global leader in renewable energy. We are well placed to partner with Africa to develop the necessary solutions, both through financing and through expertise. And we must learn that we must never differentiate our activities in the field of innovation, climate, and development. These three dimensions belong together. And we are also able to do more than these flagship operations. The EIB also invests in off-grid solar kits that can bring essential power to individual households in Chad, Mozambique, Uganda. My colleague and friend, Vice President Ambroise Fayol, will go into more detail on how we do this in the coming session, as well as how we can do more of it. Ladies and gentlemen, the African continent has a young and dynamic population, and we are seeing that it is urbanizing quickly. Investment needs are huge, and the bank is working with different partners to provide proactive support to build projects from the ground up, incorporating robust climate risk assessment. In 2020, the EIB provided financing for power distribution in Mali, water and sanitation in Angola, and the reconstruction of vital urban infrastructure in Mozambique. These projects will make a difference for hundreds of thousands of people. Digitalization, we know, is key for green, sustainable growth. In this field, Africa is full of incredible ideas that deserve to be supported, and we will hear more about it in a later session today. Ladies and gentlemen, investment at an unprecedented scale is needed to ensure a green future for Africa. To achieve this, we need to work together. I'm glad President Adesina of the African Development Bank, our good friend, is with us today. Last year, our two institutions, the African Development Bank and the EU Bank, signed a joint action plan to work together even more closely in the coming years. We will concentrate on financial inclusion and empowering women, climate action, digitalization, and developing skills for young people, as well as access to health services and products. Let me thank you very much for your attention. And once again, let me especially thank the Portuguese presidency for its leadership in putting together today's important event. I hope you find it thought-provoking and stimulating, and I'm sure it will lead us to more action, working together. Thank you very much. Obrigado.
Thank you both. Obrigado a ambos. This forum is the end of the long road, like Werner Hoyer said, as pointed out, 26 online green talks with more than 5,000 registered participants from the two continents, Africa and Europe. But it won't stop here. The challenge is still in front of us. We need, no matter where, to do our best to save the planet. We owe it to the next generations. Let's now hear the message from Ursula von der Leyen, the President of the European Commission, a message pre-recorded specially to this event.
President Faki, dear Moussa, distinguished guests from Europe and Africa, welcome to the Green Investment Forum. And thank you, President Hoyer and Minister Santos Silva, for organizing this. The green transition is not only a necessity to fight climate change. The green transition is the greatest economic opportunity of our times. It can be the driver of our recovery both in Europe and in Africa. Think, for instance, about renewable energy. Renewables are by now cheaper than most other energy sources, and they create more jobs. With the right investment, renewable energy can power up Africa's rising industry. And this is but one example. The potential of the green economy in Africa is massive. From waste management to climate-smart agriculture, green investment can be the fuel of Africa's recovery. And this is what brings us here today. Africa is setting up several important initiatives, such as the African Green Stimulus Program and the African Circular Economy Alliance. Let's discuss how Europe can be Africa's partner in this. For instance, we are working with the European Investment Bank to cover the risk of green investment in Africa taken by both private investors and African governments. The EU-Africa Business Forum has now a specific focus on investing in clean energy. Green investment is a shared European and African interest. It's time to discuss how to mobilize more of it, especially ahead of COP26 and the EU-Africa Summit. Here in Europe, the European Green Deal is our new growth strategy and the centerpiece of our recovery. The same can be true for Africa. An African Green Deal for a stronger and more prosperous Africa. And in this spirit, a very warm welcome to all of you at the EU-Africa Green Investment Forum. Thank you for joining.
As President von der Leyen has put it, let's discuss how Europe can partner with Africa in this necessary transition to fight climate change. It's our planet, our life, and everyone is needed, from institutions, public or private, governments, business entrepreneurs, civil society, universities, everybody. Every gesture can make a difference. A key institution in all this process is certainly the African Union. Unfortunately, Moussa Faki, the President of the African Union Commission, won't be able to be with us today due to the present situation in Chad. Another key institution that plays a pivotal role is the African Development Bank. They have defined 5 priorities for the continent: light up and power Africa, feed Africa, industrialize Africa, integrate Africa, and improve the quality of life for the people of Africa. All these priorities are closely linked with the goals set by the 2013 Agenda of the United Nations. On that note, I'll give you now Akinwumi Adesina, the President of the African Development Bank, to deliver the opening keynote.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I am delighted to join you at this high-level EU-Africa Green Investment Forum. I'd like to congratulate the government of Portugal for organizing this extremely important event during its EU presidency. Bravo. And you're doing it in conjunction with our partner institution, the European Investment Bank. Congratulations. Europe and Africa are strategic partners. Now, you don't need to look too far to understand why. The level of trade and investment between our two regions is a sufficient enough indication. The EU, the continent's largest trading partner, accounts for 36% of Africa's trading goods. In 2019, the value of bilateral trade was worth 235 billion euros. But it's not only the EU. From the UK, China, India, United States, Japan, and Russia, an increasingly common feature is the number of bilateral summits. Now, this includes the UK-Africa Summit, the India-Africa Summit, the China-Africa Summit, the US-Africa Summit, Japan-Africa Summit, Russia-Africa Summit, and the list goes on. The question we must ask is, what are each of these global players seeing? Very simple. They are seeing a different Africa, an Africa that is open for business. Over the past decade, Africa has experienced a phenomenal economic growth. Now, prior to the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, Africa had 6 out of the 10 fastest growing economies in the world. This impressive growth was spurred by economic reforms, political stability, improved governance, and general improvements in the macroeconomic environment. Indeed, Africa has posted significant improvements in the Ease of Doing Business Index, accounting for 33% of the global improvements in business and regulatory reforms. Now, the bottom line is that Africa is now a market that cannot be ignored. Now, think of it. The continent has the largest youth population in the world. It is experiencing exceptionally high levels of urbanization and a rapidly rising consumer market. The African Continental Free Trade Area is now the single largest free trade zone in the world. And now, with a population that will reach 2.4 billion people by 2050, Africa is a huge market offering incredible opportunities. Now, if you're not invested in Africa, you are simply missing out. In a COVID-19 era, we obviously have challenges. The pandemic has thrown spanners in the wheels of economic growth and investments around the world. And Africa is no exception. Africa witnessed its lowest GDP growth in 5 decades due to this pandemic. But the future looks much better, even if challenging. Growth is projected to recover from minus 2.1% in 2020 to 3.4% this year. The recovery will be across the board for oil-dependent countries, commodities-dependent countries, tourism-dependent economies, and non-commodity-dependent economies. The recovery pathways offers now enormous opportunities. Recovery must be green and build climate resilience. Recovery must boost green investments. Recovery must ensure greater space for the private sector to help reduce heavy debt burdens now facing governments. Recovery must drive inclusive growth that expands new and better opportunities for the youth and, of course, the hardworking women of Africa. And the recovery must take advantage of new business opportunities brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic, especially in the digital economy and the new business normal offered through ICT platforms. A great place to also drive recovery is in the energy sector. Now, over the last 5 years since the African Development Bank began implementing its Light Up and Power Africa strategy, our investments in the energy sector has increased from $5 billion in 2011 to 2015 to $7 billion in 2016 to 2020. Our work has helped to provide electricity to more than 20 million people within that period. Now, access to electricity has risen in Africa from 42% in 2015 to 54% by 2020. In recent years, we at the bank have focused largely on renewable energy. The bank's investment in renewable energy generation expanded from just 9% a decade ago to 70% by 2019. And that's 80% increase since the bank's New Deal on energy was established 6 years ago at the start of my presidency of the bank. Now, you can understand why. Africa has over 10 terawatts of solar potential, the largest in the world. 350 gigawatts of hydro potential, 110 gigawatts of wind potential, and an additional 15 gigawatts of geothermal potential. Now, we can't eat all that potential. We've got to unlock it. And that's why the African Development Bank provided $500 million to Morocco to build large-scale solar power stations, including the 800 megawatts Midelt and the 510 megawatts New Ouarzazate facility, which are among now the largest concentrated solar power plants in the entire world. The bank has also invested $150 million to build the 310 megawatts Lake Turkana wind power plant in Kenya. It is now the largest wind farm in the entire sub-Saharan Africa. Beyond these major energy investments and successes, we do intend to power the entire Sahel of Africa via solar. And that's why the African Development Bank has launched what we call the Desert to Power Initiative, a $20 billion initiative to build 10,000 megawatts of solar power plants all across the Sahel. Now, that will become the largest solar zone in the world and provide electricity for 250 million people. Africa's energy transition presents, ladies and gentlemen, a $100 billion per year investment opportunity. Now, enormous potential also exists in agriculture. And that's because the size of the food and agribusiness market in Africa is estimated to reach a whopping $1 trillion by 2030. Now, with 65% of the world's uncultivated arable land being in Africa, it is clear that what Africa does with agriculture will determine the future of food in the world. And that's why the African Development Bank is investing massively in climate-smart agriculture to support the continent to adapt to climate change and build more resilient food systems. The bank's Africa Climate Smart Agriculture is targeting 10 million farmers with climate-smart agricultural technologies and practices. Now, this will help to create 500,000 new green jobs and mobilize $1 billion of climate funds. Africa's massive needs for infrastructure, from roads to rails to ports to airports, the internet connectivity, water and sanitation, as well as urban housing needs, present enormous opportunities for green investments. Now, the size of the infrastructure opportunities is worth between $130 billion to $170 billion annually. Now, that is massive. Africa's future infrastructure needs to be greener and climate resilient. We must shift away from simply building the cheapest infrastructure to investing in life cycle financing. Now, it's not how fast you can build a road or a bridge It is how long they last. It is now time, therefore, to take into consideration quality, maintenance costs, and environmental issues more seriously. To drive greater private sector investment in green infrastructure, financial instruments are needed for project preparation, reducing risk of investments to the private sector, and especially blended finance to lower the cost of capital for investors and to improve project profitability and financial sustainability. Now, let me share some exciting developments with you. I applaud the government of Portugal for establishing a $400 million Lusophone Compact Guarantee Program at the African Development Bank to help to reduce the risk of private sector investments in Portuguese-speaking countries. Bravo. I also applaud the European Union for its own leadership as well in this area. The EU External Investment Plan has provided over €1 billion to the African Development Bank to support 31 project grants worth €648 million, equity grants in 4 projects worth €97 million, and 6 guarantees for projects worth €242 million. Of course, we would like to do more and support more private sector investments in greening of Africa's economy. I am excited about our partnership with the European Union. I especially hope that we can soon conclude the new financing framework and partnership agreement to further jointly boost our joint investments for green investments in Africa. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, a greener Africa must also focus on the circular economy. And the opportunities here again are enormous. Now take, for example, the fact that 90% of Africa's waste is disposed in dump sites and landfills. The fact is that waste can be recycled and turned into wealth. Today, a new plastic recycling plant in Ghana consumes 75% less energy and has already created 2,300 green jobs. The opportunities in the circular economy are boundless. Converting food waste into organic fertilizers will increase the circularity of the food systems. Likewise, recycling plastic packaging will improve the circularity of the packaging industry. The large and growing electronics sector can also achieve substantial circularity through recycling and collection activities. Fashion and textile waste can be converted into garments. And we can improve how we use mass timber for expanding the built environment. We must all get excited about the circular economy. Now, to further promote the circular economy, the African Development Bank has established the Africa Circular Economy Facility, thanks to the support from Finland and the Nordic Development Fund. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, climate change is a challenge for Africa, no doubt. But climate change also presents a $3 trillion investment opportunity in Africa by 2030. And that is why the African Development Bank and the Global Center for Adaptation have launched the African Adaptation Acceleration Program to help to mobilize $25 billion for scaling up climate adaptation actions across Africa. But public financing alone will not be enough. Over 70% of the financing needed will have to come from the private sector to complement public investments. The private sector, especially the small and medium-sized enterprises, over 70% of the financing needed will have to come from the private sector to complement public investments. The private sector, especially the small and medium-sized enterprises, is critical in mitigating climate change and implementing adaptation measures. Now, this calls for innovative approaches to attract and steer financial flows towards low carbon and climate resilient development. The African Development Bank is raising green bonds to drive green growth investments in Africa. And so far, the bank has raised $2.5 billion in green bonds, which we use to support, for example, the Cabeolika wind farm project in Cape Verde to power the country through renewable energy. And now we plan to support the establishment of green banks in Africa. We have also established the African Financial Alliance on Climate Change, which we call AFAC, to drive the greening of investments in Africa. We are linking all stock exchanges, pension and sovereign wealth funds, central banks, and other financial institutions. Our goal is transformational: unlock private finance, mobilize and incentivize a transition of their portfolios, as well as tilt Africa's financial system towards green investments. As we all move into the new normal for businesses, greater investments will be needed to also support the digital economy in Africa and reduce widening disparities in access to the internet and broadband, especially for small and medium-sized enterprises. Think about it. There are huge investment opportunities in commercial digital connectivity. Today, Africa Mobile Network is deploying low-cost rural telecoms infrastructure, including masts, to support mobile operators to expand services. Now, these small mobile operators need financing to support their network expansion. Connectivity is expanding the digital economy as well, and investment opportunities in data centers all across Africa. The digital economy has also opened up massive opportunities for digital healthcare platforms and telemedicine to expand access to affordable healthcare services. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is very clear that incredible opportunities for green investments exist in Africa today and in the future. Now, Africa is already green. Africa just needs to get greener. What is needed now is to have more euros to back Africa's green growth. So, don't think about why you cannot do business in Africa. Rather, think about the tremendous green investment opportunities available today, and many more that will emerge well in the distant future. Think differently. Think Africa. Welcome to the Green Africa. Thank you very much.
Now it's time for us to start with our debates, but first, and to emphasize a bit more the importance of what is at stake, nearly 40 countries' leaders got together yesterday and today on Earth Day Summit at the invitations of the United States President Joe Biden. The purpose is the same: reducing carbon emissions. Every decision in this field will have consequences on our daily lives. From the way we drove our cars, we eat our homes, we manufacture our goods. In our first session, we will discuss how international financial institutions with European and African development partners can boost green investments and promote a stable business climate. Ricardo Alexandre will be the moderator of the panel. Ricardo, you have the floor.
Thank you, Paulo. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first panel of this forum, Boosting Green and Sustainable Investment in Africa, the evolving roles of the European Union and of the African Union, governments and development banks. We will start by showing a video that somehow shows us the impact of one of the most pressing and dramatic climate events in the past few years, the Idai hurricane in Mozambique.
Ciclone Idai destruiu-nos todo o bairro que não tinha casas. Deixou mesmo tudo vazio, que estava de pé.
Veio com muita força, tiraram as chapas, tentamos fugir do lado para o outro, não foi possível. Passamos toda a noite assim, com mamãe aí com as crianças, até amanhecer.
O impacto foi muito negativo. Tivemos a destruição parcial do teto, nos blocos de enfermarias, a unidade sanitária.
Este fenómeno das mudanças climáticas é relativamente recente e muitas dessas infraestruturas, algumas foram construídas ainda no tempo colonial e outras depois da independência. E, portanto, essas mudanças climáticas aparecem com uma grande intensidade e uma grande frequência que era difícil prever anteriormente.
Nós, num primeiro tempo, proporcionámos uma ajuda humanitária e de salvação e depois começámos uma resposta mais a meio e a longo prazo. Este projeto do BEI é uma combinação, digamos, entre um subsídio dado pela Comissão Europeia e um empréstimo que é concedido em termos bastante concessionais e que se vai focar as águas e saneamento.
Para nós tomarmos águas, nós catamos aqui na vala, então tentamos ferver e consumimos esta água.
A água me ajudava, em vez de ir buscar água na outra casa, então eu tinha torneira aqui.
Não estamos a usar mais a rede FIPAG porque o fornecimento é exíguo. O período de fornecimento de água não corresponde com as nossas atividades.
Toda esta ação de investimento em infraestrutura é feita num espírito de building back better, ou seja, reconstruir melhor, de forma a que as infraestruturas que são objeto deste projeto possam ser mais resilientes a futuros desastres naturais que possam acontecer aqui.
A nossa recuperação tem que ser urgente, resiliente e abrangente. Não só na ação que nós temos agora com o BEI, mas em todos os programas de cooperação que temos com os nossos parceiros, no sentido de evitar desastres maiores.
An urgent, resilient and inclusive recovery. That's what we have learned in the past few seconds from this video. Now it's my great pleasure to welcome Mr. Mo Ibrahim, founder and chair of the Mo Ibrahim Foundation, co-founder of the Africa-Europe Foundation. Mo Ibrahim, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ricardo. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And first, I wish to express my gratitude to the presidency, the Portuguese presidency, to the leadership of the European Union and the European Investment Bank for holding this forum. I think it is timely and is important. So thanks to all of them. In Africa and in Europe, we are all struggling with this pandemic. It's a health crisis with economic consequences, especially in Africa. Of course, the development of the vaccines offer us a path out of this. Well, when it's available for us, anyway, we're still waiting for that vaccine. And there is hope for recovery. We hope that recovery will be more sustainable, more equitable, more job creating, and it has also to be more green. If there's something positive coming out of this pandemic crisis, really it is enforced our sense of shared fortune as human beings, or in this case, misfortune, as it happened. This virus did not differentiate between Americans, Indians, don't differentiate between gender or continent. It is global. And we had a taste, a real taste in our life, first time in our life of this generation, what is it to live through a shared problem, serious problem. And we were not prepared. And our governments, most of our governments worldwide ignored any scientific advice, and we all came short. I hope that's a lesson for us, because the next big one, of course, is climate. And it is global. To not differentiate again between continent or people. And unfortunately, there is no vaccine to deal with it. Nothing like that can be developed. So we really need to work now on the green future if we hope to have a future. That's imperative. In Africa, our top priority really should be power. Power, power, and power. We have 500 million people in Africa without access to power. 500 million people, mainly in rural areas. And you know, power is essential for economic and social development. Without power, there's no development. Now, it is clear that solar really ought to be the future of power in Africa. We have the sun. We have actually too much of the sun. You know, you can see it in my face actually. And what, you know, the solution is there. Solar has become competitive, cheaper, and it has a fantastic advantage. It is quick and fast. It can be dripped in all these communities very quickly to bring prosperity to this rural community. We have to understand, I'm talking as an engineer now, Africa is huge, vast spaces. And the idea of expanding our electric grids across the Saharas and across the forests, etc., is just not realistic. It is just too expensive, insecure, and it's going to take ages. I want just to draw the parallel between that and the development of mobile communications in Africa. We had fixed lines in Africa for over 100 years. At that time, at the beginning of the year 2000, we had only 3 million subscribers. Only 3 million people had access to fixed lines. The problem, we cannot just extend fixed line across this huge space of Africa. Mobile came and it was easier to drop capacity and service where it is needed. It is quick, it is fast. In no time, we had over 600-700 million subscribers, which changed the whole continent. That's how solar can it change the content? It is quick, it is fast, it's cheap. It's suitable for rural areas, which really it is needed, because most of those 500 people lacking of energy sources live in rural areas. And I do work with the Council on State Fragility, with many wonderful economists and politicians and academics, business people. And their top recommendations, I mean, you can guess it, that to help fragile states move forward, the first thing need to be done is power. And it is solar power, because that changes life of people overnight, gives people hope, gives them a better feeling about where we go forward, offer jobs, economic activities, help take people out of power. That applies. Many of these fragile countries actually are in Africa, a large number of them. And it applies also to the rest of the countries where they have rural area. So this is an area I think we need to focus very much on. I heard my brother Akin talking about $20 billion in investment. This is not enough. This is peanuts. We really need a major push there. And we need to find a way to bring private money, business, the real money. And with respect to the EIB and the EU and the African Development Bank, the real money is not there. The real money is in the private sector. These are where the $1 trillion looking for investment are there. We need to attract this money in there. We need to come with creative structures to help really bring investors in Africa. And we need to think of various innovations. I mean, I know people talk about subsidies, guarantees, etc. Why not think of a different approach where public money goes in as equity, but with capped return? That may be very attractive, because public money can actually make money and can be recycled. It will be interesting. It brings a sense of partnership. It allows private sector to enhance their IRR or returns on the expense of public money, which is fine, as long as we're getting our public money back. So there are so many possibilities to bring the private money into Africa. I really need, we really need to work on, in our side as an African foundation, we have been fighting for 15 years now to try to improve governance in Africa, because governance and rule of law is important in attracting investors. Of course, it's also important to improve the life of the people, but it's also important to attract investment. And we are winning. It is tough, but I think we are moving, and governance are improving there. So we need to find all the tools. There's no silver bullet. We need to work on governance. We need to work on attracting private sector. We need to target the right sectors of economy. And what I hope for is we target Power Africa, and we just go, that can take people out of poverty quicker than any other things we can do. And all that can be done green. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mo Ibrahim. I was struck by this, by a number. Mr. Mo Ibrahim has just given us the 500 million people with no power, which somehow give us an idea of the dimension of the challenge that is ahead of us. I will now, Mo Ibrahim is joining the panel, a panel with Jutta Urpilainen, Commissioner for International Partnerships at the European Commission, Josefa Sacco, Commissioner for Agriculture, Rural Development, Blue Economy and Sustainable Environment in the African Union, Amadou Hott, Minister for Economy, Planning and Cooperation in Senegal, Betty Maina, Cabinet Secretary at the Ministry of Industrialization, Trade and Enterprise Development in Kenya, Ambroise Fayol, Vice President at the EIB, European Investment Bank, and Francisco André, Secretary of State for Foreign Affairs and Cooperation in Portugal. I would now ask everyone to be as strict as possible to the 2-3 minutes rule of the introductory messages, so that we can have some time for debate after that. And I would give the floor to Commissioner Urpilainen.
Thank you, Ricardo. And I also want to thank the Portuguese presidency for organizing this EU-Africa Green Investment Forum and also giving me an opportunity to participate. The Green Deal and the Green Agenda is critical to the EU-African partnership and the first partnership in our Africa Comprehensive Strategy. It is key work strand on our path towards the EU-AU Summit in the spring of 2022. Boosting investments and accelerating the green transition will help generate jobs, boost their economies, and tackle also social challenges. It will also be essential to support education and skills training and prepare people for the opportunities the green economy will generate. In our new financing instrument for external cooperation, the NDICI Global Europe, there is a dedicated 30% spending target for climate-related action. And this is more than 21 billion euros over the next 7 years. We will work as a Team Europe, pooling expertise, networks, capacity and resources from the EU and its member states and European development finance institutions. And I want to thank the European Investment Bank, which co-organized today's event, for their commitment to increase the share of its financing dedicated to climate action and environmental sustainability to reach 50% of their and its operations in 2025. Accelerating the green transition in Africa will require significant investments, like Mo was explaining, strong business links, new business models, and the full commitment of the private sector, both in international but also local. And these investments are boosted by sound regulatory environments. So we need to engage with private sector to fill the investment gap in Africa. And this is why the Commission supports and values events like this one. I welcome the active participation of private actors by linking African and European investors and public and private actors. These events really create real opportunities to change the investment landscape and meet Africa's needs. Thank you for my part and looking forward to our discussion.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Urpilainen. Now I give the floor to Commissioner José Façago.
Thank you, Ricardo, for giving me the floor. First of all, I would like to really greet my colleagues, the panelists. Good morning from Lisbon, I think, and good afternoon, depending on your geographic location. Excellencies, participants in this important panel. I would like, first of all, to commend the Portuguese government for organizing this important event, as well as the European Investment Bank. Without no ado, let me just make my introductory statement about the strategy that we have in African Union on the green recovery. Let me thank the organizer for extending an invitation to the African Union Commission to participate in this important event of the high-level EU-Africa Green Investment Forum. As the world is moving towards a net zero carbon emission, Africa cannot afford to be left behind. Aspiration number 1 of the African Agenda 2063 envisions an Africa that is prosperous based on inclusive growth and sustainable development. Our target of the aspiration number 1 in Agenda 2063 calls for on Africa to utilize blue ocean economy resources sustainably for accelerating economic growth. We have about 38 countries who are coastal on the continent and a lot of islands. Target number 7 is for Africa to attain environmentally sustainable and climate resilient economy and community. This is a clear demonstration of African Union's commitment and ambition towards emission reduction and green transition. As the Commission and our member states, we are already embarking on green programs that are aimed at emission reduction and sustainable development. These include waste management and circular economy, conserving biodiversity, sustainable forest management, and wildlife conservation, sustainable land management, including the Great Green Wall Initiative, supporting implementation of the national determined contribution, investing in blue economy, scaling up climate-smart agriculture, and food security. Both the Commission and the Member States are also promoting investment in renewable energy, energy efficiency, and energy transition, as energy is one of the sectors that contributes greenhouse gas significantly at the global scale. However, it will need to be aligned to the principle of a just transition, a green transition which takes into account historical responsibility for issues like climate change and a transition that does not push already disadvantaged and marginalized community in Africa deeper into poverty and those promoting more vulnerability. The COVID-19 pandemic has further amplified this vulnerability and introduced additional efforts to achieve our additional problems in an effort to achieve our global and regional development agenda, Agenda 2063 and the SDGs. The post-pandemic recovery process presents an opportunity for a green transition for countries to build back better and greener through investment in a more friendly, sustainable, and resilient economy. I know the time is against me. I just want to share with you the latest progress we made. It is for this reason that the African Union Commission developed a post-COVID green recovery action plan with the support of the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, South Africa as the chair of the African Ministerial Conference on Environment, and the United Kingdom. Let me just point the 5 priority areas, and I will have time to develop after. The first one is a climate finance. The second, supporting renewable energy. The third is natural-based solution. The fourth, resilient agriculture. And then green and resilient city. Those are the 5. I will develop it further. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister. Now we will listen to Minister Amadou Hott, Minister for Economy and Planning and Cooperation in Senegal.
Hello. Bonjour aux participants et aux panélistes et bonjour aux modérateurs. Donc, je tiens à me présenter.
Good morning to the participants and to the panelists.
Normally, it's my colleague who was expected to be with you, but unfortunately, due to his heavy agenda, the minister asked me to speak on behalf of him and on behalf of the government of Senegal in my capacity as the director of financing of development. I'm conveying to you the greetings, the regards of the minister and his great interest to participate in this forum, which is a very important one and important for Senegal as well. I think we will have the opportunity to get into more details later, but first and foremost, it's very important to reiterate what has been said by my predecessors. Climate change is an important, a serious threat to the growth of our countries in Africa. Therefore, having innovative funding solutions, financial solutions, green solutions are pathways that we are exploring and which are very important in terms of solutions for Africa. And we are open to exploring any initiative that is likely to bringing additional financial support for the recovery of the post-pandemic economic that has affected the world. I think that it is important to say or to commend the financial institutions for the initiatives through the solutions that are put on the table. And later, we will come to the mechanisms that are applied to Senegal in order to boost the support to green financing in order to cope with the current situation. This is where I want to stop and once again greet all the panelists and express the honor of the minister to be invited to this forum. Thank you.
The floor to Betty Maina, Secretary at the Ministry of Industrialization, Trade and Enterprise Development in Kenya.
Thank you very much. And very excited to join this forum. And I greet all you distinguished speakers and attendants at this meeting. It's a great honor for us to join you at this high-level forum, EU African Green Investment Forum, which aims to boost green and sustainable investment in Africa. This forum comes at a time when the effects of climate change have been worsened by the COVID-19 pandemic. We have witnessed a lot of attacks. Last year, perhaps the locust invasion is still topmost in many people's minds, but that is building and adding to the perennial droughts and floods, which we have had in Africa, which have far-reaching consequences on the communities and livelihoods, ecosystems, and infrastructure. These disruptive effects have significantly undermined the social and economic development agenda of many countries in the African continent, and therefore we all need to work together urgently and boldly on interventions to deal with the challenges that have been posed both by climate change and by COVID. Both COVID and climate change provide us all with a chance to renew multilateral cooperation in tackling them. No one is safe unless all are safe. The conference we are having today enables us to build on a shared history of solidarity between Africa and Europe. We need to renew this history through practical collaboration between the European and African governments, peoples, and the private sector. All our governments need to prioritize and ensure that our recovery is green. In Kenya, we have made great strides in greening our energy mix, for instance, where renewables now make up more than 70%. We have made great strides in promoting energy efficiency. We're making strides in promotion of circularity. And all these are building on our commitment made pursuant to the Paris Climate Agreement. We are proud of our partnership with Portugal and for the Portuguese invitation to join this meeting. We're also proud of our partnership in co-hosting the United Nations Ocean Conference later this year, which builds on the lessons from the International Conference on the Blue Economy that Kenya hosted in 2018. We maintain an ambition to deepen our green credentials and welcome support to our strategy and regulatory and legal framework through support to government. We welcome partnerships with the private sector and society in general. And we look forward to welcoming more European partners to joining us in realizing this ambition. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maina, for these introductory remarks. And now I will give the floor to Ambroise Fayol from the European Investment Bank.
Thank you very much, and good morning to all of you. Very pleased to be in this panel, and thanks a lot for the Portuguese presidency for having organized that. I mean, the President Hoyer made that very clear already in his introduction and speech. I think there are three messages that I would like to convey in my introduction this morning. The first message is that it is imperative to build back better. And the green recovery is not only a nice thing to say, it is a necessity. And actually, when you look at the way that the climate urgency is real, when you look at the way that Africa is the region that contributes the least to the greenhouse gas emissions, but it is yet the biggest to be impacted by climate change, we need to act. And at EIB, we have decided to put green in everything we do. Since the end of last year, as President Hoyer said, all our activities are Paris aligned. And by 2025, we intend to have 50% of our projects bringing a positive contribution to climate and environment. So that's something that, that has been very much highlighted in our well-targeted Climate Bank roadmap. And we very much hope that this is something that will support an effective climate change response and the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. My second message is that partnerships are key. And actually here I have in mind several kinds of partnerships. The first one is, of course, partnership and cooperation between Europe and Africa. And I'm convinced that the EU-Africa partnership involving the public and private sectors makes a lot of sense to respond to the challenges of a green transition, especially in the energy sector. Africa needs a rapid increase of electricity supply with sustainability energy sources as a basis for long-term prosperity. Europe is a global leader in the renewable sector, which positions European stakeholders well to cooperate well with Africa in its endeavor to leapfrog away from fossil fuel consumption towards Paris Agreement targets. And it's also the case for partnership between and among Europeans. And of course, I am very pleased that Commissioner Urpilainen is in this panel, as the EU Bank and a key player of Team Europe, the European Investment Bank, is driven by EU external policy and interest and invest in accordance to EU values and principles, what we call the policy first, while also responding to the priorities of our African partners. And also the partnership between the multilateral development banks, development financial institutions, the UN, and also, and that's my last point, the private sector that is key for delivering on climate targets. We need the private sector to deliver climate finance at the required speed and scale, and to channel it to where it is most needed. It is going to be extremely important that we have not only the support from international financial institutions, such as the EIB, in terms of financing, in terms of de-risking, in terms of technical assistance, advisory services, etc. But also it needs partnerships to mobilize the private sector and support upstream work. So we need these scarce resources that are the public resources are scarce these days, better to mobilize better the private investment in this fight, including by harnessing the power of the capital markets. I will stop there. Thank you very much.
Fayol, thank you very much. And now our co-host, Francisco André, Secretary of State for Foreign Affairs and Cooperation.
Thank you, Ricardo, and good morning to all. We have little time, so I will evade the traditional greetings. I will just want to thank once again all the participants and panelists in today's debate, and also the European Investment Bank for co-organizing this with us. As Boaz did, I will just leave you three main messages. First message is concerning dialogue, and this is what we are having today. This forum marks the high point of a 30-day intensive dialogue that where both continents discussed opportunities, shared practices, and brought forward solutions that make the case for green investment in Africa. During these last 30 days, we heard the civil society, professors, investors, businessmen, and all kinds of entrepreneurs. We learned a lot with experiences from both the two continents, and this is what dialogue must be all about. The green transition in Africa is not only an environment imperative, it's also a unique social and economic opportunity. This is also something that we have learned and understood during these last 30 days. Apart from the dialogue and this platform, what we also need is targets. And Africa has the conditions to leapfrog the energetic transition, to have a more diverse economy, and to foster sustainable and a more inclusive economic growth. And on this, we are talking about the type of growth that creates jobs, reduces inequalities, makes profit, but also improves health, protects the ecosystems, and allows the development of more competitive value chains and more sustainable livelihoods. And when we talk about targets, we have also the European example here that we very much raised during these discussions. We are not only committed with reducing emissions by 55% by 2030 and to become also climate neutral by 2050. We have also decided to make these ambitious targets legally binding. And this is why we adopted this last week, also under our Portuguese presidency, after long negotiations with the European Parliament, we reached an agreement to adopt a new climate law. And the third message is about means and resources. As the European Union is leading and wants to lead by its example, it's also engaged in financing the global climate action and support its partners when adopting more sustainable and efficient development models and policies. This is why we are so proud of having also adopted this semester the NDC that Jutta already mentioned in her intervention. It's an overall amount of almost 80 billion euro. And with, as Jutta mentioned, 30% of a spending target for climate objectives, and with almost 30 billion euros to invest in sub-Saharan Africa. So this is a major instrument, and it's a major instrument that can boost the investment. So to sum up, to take forward the green transition in this partnership between our two continents, we need first dialogue, which we are having, and that we hope to not to finish today, but to continue these dialogues in the next months. We need targets, and we are setting targets and objectives both on the public and private sector, and we need means and resources. Now we have the means and resources. Now it's time to put our hands to work side by side, the two continents and our entrepreneurs from both the continents, to use these means and resources that us decision makers have created the possibility to use. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now European Union, apparently, as we learned from the past few days, European Union has also a strong ally in Washington, D.C., with the commitments made by U.S. President Joe Biden. I will start our debate by asking Commissioner José Sako, of course, that the COVID-19 pandemic has had probably a very strong impact in the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, in Africa. But my question is, how can we ensure that there is a green recovery that is both sustainable and inclusive in Africa?
Thank you very much for this question. I would like to say that, first of all, for us to achieve really a sustainable transition, we really need to bring everybody on board, leave no one behind. So I think the African Union is really working with the regional community, our regional communities, and we are working with member states. But we also, you know, in this journey, we also working with already the EU. The EU is working with us, so we need to bring everybody on board. That's why I commend what the Secretary of the State Secretary for Portugal said, that the dialogue is very important. And I think that African Union and the EU is the right platform to start organizing this type of, you know, people to people from Africa and Europe to be together, identify key bankable projects, and, you know, start working on that. We at the African Union, we have already, you know, we started working with our member states in a lot of activities, a lot of programs. But what we need is to really have a stronger collaboration amongst all of us. We are working with the EU in terms of negotiating how can we implement our NDCs, the national investment plan, our NDC, the National Development for the Paris Agreement. We are working with the EU, and our negotiators, they work together. So there is already a platform in terms of environment, I mean, in terms of climate change. And this is the type of this task force that we need to install, you know, in sector by sector, where today we are talking about the importance of energy. So we need to bring everybody on board and see what are the challenges Africa is facing to have access to energy. You know, when we're talking about energy, we should not forget the rural electrification program. It's very important. So if we want to save, you know, green investment, we have to also look at the issue of food security on the continent. And there's a lot of challenges. There is a lot of challenges, and COVID-19 showed us that in Africa, we need to have our own food sovereignty. And the recovery of this food sovereignty has to pass through this type of approach that all of us be on board. And even the rural area, I'm a commissioner for rural development. Rural development, it's all about it. So the energy cannot just be the cities and, you know, the cities, in French they say banlieue, the surrounding. We have to go to the rurals so that we can feed our own people, because in Africa, 70% to 80% are rural. And today we have a problem of our farmers that are old, they are above 60. And we want to engage the youth to come to digitalization. But digitalization needs power, infrastructure. So we need to look at water and energy, not only energy, the water, because we have a lot of climate change is giving a lot of water stress, mostly in the southern region of Africa, even the Sahel region. So those are the two main things that we have to focus. Light, you know, and we need green transition, and also water. How are we going to address the issue of sanitation and water?
Would you say that this, you have spoken about you both have spoken about this event as a platform for dialogue. Would you say that this event could, promoted by the EIB, the European Union, the African Union, and governments, could it be transformed in a yearly event?
it can be an apex. We can develop, work with the partners and be an apex in the African Union. We can coordinate it and call for these private sectors, all the civil society to join us. We are doing it with the youth already on the agribusiness. So we have a Pan-African agribusiness apex. So this dialogue of green recovery, we can have also a Pan-Africa green recovery apex under the African Union. And then we can, try to convert, organize yearly, a forum to discuss and leverage, the progress we are making in terms of the action we are going to identify during this important forum.
Commissioner Urpilainen, are there already good examples for effective partnerships between both continents in support of green and sustainable development, or are we still on the beginning of that road?
There are good examples, and I fully agree with my sister Commissioner Josefa that we will only fulfill the investment gap needed to accelerate the green transition in Africa with the engagement of private actors, both international and local. And this was also my message in my introduction. And actually, this is why the European Commission is facilitating public-private dialogue processes, which can create networking opportunities and also improve business climate. And an example of this is Sustainable Business for Africa, so CB4A initiative, which was launched in 2017 during the EU-Africa Business Forum in Abidjan. So we encourage the government, the private sector, and relevant actors to identify those relevant reforms to improve the investment climate. Because I think, of course, we can talk to Mu who knows the private sector very well, but at least the message I received from the private sector is that we need to improve the environment. So the business environment is the key in a way when the companies are also thinking the investments for Africa. At the country level, the EU is facilitating a structured public-private dialogue in more than 30 African countries. So we do that also at the country level. And there are currently 21 EU chambers of commerce that participate in public-private dialogues at country level. So there is a lot of activity. And a more recent example is the high-level dialogue of 16th April and the virtual digital marketplace on green energy that we co-organized with the Portuguese presidency and the European Africa Business Forum on 16th April. So there are a lot of examples, but of course there is still room for improvement as well.
There are good examples. There are as well new instruments for development cooperation. There is an external dimension of the European Green Deal. I would ask Francisco André, how can we link this with the role that the EU and the EU development cooperation can play in driving green investment in Africa?
We have one main axe in our cooperation policies. Human development is, of course, at the core of our policies, but we always said at the European Union that the green transition and the green investment is also to be at the core of our priorities. And I think that's what we are having, and this is what we are assisting here today in this debate, that this is fully meeting the expectations that our societies in both continents are demanding from us decision makers when it concerns this. As you also mentioned, Ricardo, the attention that both the European Union and also Africa are bringing to the table on this subject, now this is getting traction. Even yesterday, as you said, also the United States announced a new additional cut on their emissions. It means that this agenda and this ambitious agenda is being shared every day by more and more countries, and this is a positive step towards our objectives. But answering your questions, what I want to emphasize is that to unleash Africa's economic potential, it is possible, but it is possible through a green and sustainable investment. And this is not only about financing. This must have, of course, innovative financing, and this is why we are here today. This is why also the European Investment Bank is sharing with us also the responsibility of carrying on this dialogue. But this is not only about finances. This is also about shared expertise, co-creation and development of adequate solutions on the green investment. And this is what we have been learning in these last days. This is also our experience as a country and as a cooperation partner. And what I want to just to mention is that during this dialogue, what we learned is that both our continents are ready to commit to this agenda and to have it at the core of our cooperation as partners to have more resilient and more inclusive societies. And we also think that the next European Union and African Union Summit will present a unique opportunity to have this green transition in its agenda. And I think that with all these initiatives, with the involvement of the Commission, with all the work that UTA is doing, the European Investment Bank and all the countries, I think that we are at the turning point of having the green transition as a part, an essential and crucial part of the agenda of the dialogue between the two continents. This is what we want, because without that, we will never bring the private and the public sector to work together on this.
But let me just get back to the words of the statements made by President Biden in the past few days. Would you say that with the turning point that you mentioned between both continents, Europe and Africa, and with the commitment, with the present and new commitment of US, from now on, there's no excuse?
We think we are working to have a situation where there is no excuse, but we know that we have always lots of obstacles ahead of us. Our job is to create the conditions to move forward and definitely to reach those ambitious targets that, in our case, we already established in the new climate law. More important now is to understand, as Commissioner Sacco mentioned and underlined very clearly, we will never get there unless we bring the companies and the private sector to work not only with us, but it's our task to create the conditions for the private sector to develop into a more sustainable and green business models. And as much as we want our public budgets to foster this road, as Mo Ibrahim said, this is nothing compared to the trillions that the private sector might bring to this future.
Secretary Betty Maina, how can this be done in terms of job creation, especially to young people? And you are from a very big African country. We know that the climate change is already playing a huge impact in the lives of the populations. How can this green transition be set up, let's say, without disregarding the urgent need of job creation in your countries?
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think we need to look at it. All investments will lead to job creation. So the targeted investment that builds on public programs and builds on the public policy should be able to help us meet that. As we recover from COVID, of course, the first thing that we're doing is basically just trying to get the economies moving and producing again. But I think this gives us an opportunity to also give some indicative direction through public policy on the nature of growth and recovery we expect. And that should also signal the areas of investment, whether it's foreign investment or local investment. The Commissioner, for instance, has spoken about agriculture and rural development, but this gives us an opportunity to engage young people in these new areas. With expansion of ICT, for instance, with expansion of energy, we have actually seen a lot of young people in our country take to agriculture, which helps us in building our own capacity for food security and sufficiency. So these critical instruments and this critical targeted support with the direction of public policy will then encourage more and more young people. In the context of circularity, for instance, we've seen a lot of opportunities created in waste recovery and creation and innovation of new products that also lends itself to engagement of young people. So in keeping with this, I think we must have opportunities for more products. That I cannot, that also gives us an opportunity to really inspire small and medium enterprises in our countries, because that's our strength in Africa, as in every economy. So my view is that building on clear directions and thoughts by government and directions of by public policy, partnerships such as with Europe and with ourselves should be able to send the right signals and provide the right instruments. We'll invest in the infrastructure, but we'll also need to provide the right financing instruments for small and medium enterprises to arise in this regard. Thank you.
Rafael, would you say that these small and medium enterprises need new financial instruments to, in a sense of easing the access to finance?
Well, I think at least we need to do more in finance for that.
No, I was asking Rafael.
And for example, what we have done last year is we have in the framework of our lending policy and at times of COVID, what we have done is to lend much more to financial institutions in Africa who are lending to SMEs. And what we have done in, like, for example, the Flexi Bank or TSDB, and what we have done is actually to put some elements of that will be linked to things that are green in SME financing, in helping the SMEs to move toward being more green. And actually, for me, this reflects one of the things in which I believe very much, which is the diversity of what we need to do in terms of financing. Because, we have spoken a lot, and the Commissioner Sako said that very clearly about what is happening in the rural area. But sustainable urban development is also key. And you have very big projects like for example, electrification grids or interconnections, but you have also very small projects, projects that are financing small off-grid for farmers or for rural areas that are today not connected. So I think we need to really have a sort of a palette of instruments. This is also why we need to have clearly strong partnerships with other public and private institutions, a point that actually the Utah made as well. And I would like to end by something that in which I believe very much. There are things that are key for making the green transition a success. And the just transition is one of these key elements. And the just transition was essential for EIB to adopt its own roadmap for climate transition, but this is also key in Africa. We cannot afford, the world will fail to have people left behind. And if I can take one example, We have seen over the last years in Europe, in America, in many Asian countries, the development of green bonds. These are great instruments to finance green projects. We have not seen that in Africa. And why is it the case? I mean, we think that as public institution, and we have done a project on that with a big asset manager, and with IFC actually, and with the Swiss cooperation, to do, well, let's try to give an incentive for African financial institutions to issue green bonds, to help them with the methodology to make sure that the green projects financed with green bonds are green projects, and to develop this kind also of green bond world that has too much concentrated in part of the world and not enough in those geographies where they are also very much needed. So, you know, I think this is really a very comprehensive agenda, and that's why we think at EIB this has to be at the heart of our strategy.
Very well. Mo Ibrahim, you told us about the need to develop power, solar and wind in Africa, and you told us about that number I mentioned a while ago, the 500 million people with no access to power. Do you think that the development of solar and wind power in Africa can as well help to change, to transform the structures of the other power, the political one?
Yes, I think it will bring a lot of stability. Let's be frank, we are very concerned about instability in a number of African countries. You are all aware of the issues we're having in Sahel, in Horn of Africa, and in a fragile situation. In order to bring stability, we need to do something quick to improve the life of people, to give some...
Excusez-moi, est-ce que vous pouvez répéter la question?
Sorry?
There was some...
Hello?
There was a strange interference. You can go on. You can go on.
Okay, sorry. So we need to bring something to improve the life of people immediately, give them hope. The worst thing when people lose hope, that's when people do stupid things. They join terrorist groups, you know, Al-Shabaab or Boko Haram, whatever they call it, there are so many of them, or jump into these rickety little boats and try to cross the Mediterranean and die in the sea. It is very sad. And we need to bring some sense of hope. Nothing like power can suddenly generate a potential for development, for education, economic activities, jobs. It can be quick. And the beauty of solar is that you can just drop it. We need to have this little mini grids, you know. Later on, many years later, we can connect an intelligent grid, collect all this stuff. But what we need is immediate impact, which improve, because that stabilize, bring peace. Peace is so important, because without peace, we are destroying the little we have. And you look at the map around us, and you can see how fragile things are in so many countries. I'm very worried. I'm very worried about this situation, and I think we need to move. We need to move quickly, and in that context, actually, I really think it's so important to try to bring the private sector to the table, and the smart way for the public money, whether it is the European Investment Bank with development agencies, multilateral, is to leverage. $1 in development money can leverage $4 or $5 in private sector. Then we can have a multiplier effect. That is smart, guys. You know, let us box smart. Let us find a way which we can really bring an avalanche of money into this investment. What an investor will look as an investor, how do you think? the first thing to think of is rule of law. Is it safe for me to go and put my money there? Is that country, do they have good governance? There is a rule of law. Does the courts work? They keep changing their mind. They keep, issuing new laws and apply it retrospectively, as some African countries, unfortunately, in the past used to do, which is absolutely crazy. We need to create this safe environment for people to come in. Unfortunately, some of our governments, they think the best way to attract investment is to offer tax holiday. This is stupid, it's damn stupid. It wrecks the public finances of the country. How are we gonna have a public finance if we don't tax companies and tax business? And this is not what business is looking for. Business is looking for transparency, for rule of law. That's what business look for. Don't give tax holidays. Offer people clean environment. That's what they're interested. Let me just point something clear. What is a tax holiday? If I'm an investor, how I'm gonna make use of a tax holiday? I cannot make use unless I'm making a profit, correct? Because tax is a profit. But if I'm making profit, I'm happy. So why you want to make me more happy? I'm happy, it's fine. So let us just be smart. Let us offer the right environment for people to come in. What public money can be used is to help create that environment together with local countries, and to give incentives, some form of guarantees, shared interest. I talked about joint equity where public money can accept lower return. That's my dream. If we can able to recycle public money over and over again by going in as equity holders, is much better than just dishing money out. This preserve public money for future recycling, increase our firepower. We need to find a smart way of really using the little we have in order to generate a greater impact. One worry for investors, for example, is currency, local currency. I invested in Nigeria, and very great investment going on very well, and suddenly the Naira goes from 90 or 100 Nairas to the dollar to 300. Then I'm underwater. Okay? I'm bankrupt. That's how businessmen think. How can we offer some security there? Can we offer loans in local currency instead of loans in euros or dollars, which becomes a problem if the currency devalue? We need just to be creative, to think, understand what is the mindset of the business people, how I can give them comfort without giving them, just dishing them money. That is not the way to do it. So I hope we can together find out an effective way to attract as much private money in there at a much lower cost to public money. I think it can be done by some creative thinking. And I think we have people around here with enough intellect to produce really wonderful models.
We are running against time, but I would like to ask you all a very simple question. Next spring next year, hopefully there will be a summit with the heads of state and government from both continents. What do you think, and I will start with you, Mohibran, what do you think that can be done until then? What should be a target in a year time? We are not listening to you. We are not hearing you.
Yeah, I would like to see some project moving ahead. We talk a lot. We have so many of these meetings. And what I want to see is a program, pilots, showing the way this new stuff moving forward. I'm sorry, I hope I'm not being politically incorrect. I'm not a great believer in all this wonderful summit where heads of state go and bat each other in the back and hug. And, it is nice, at least for people to meet, but the work done. And I think we need to get moving and put something at the table. Let us drop this energy project here and there. Let us get moving. That's the best thing we can really do.
Betty Aina, what can be done in 1 year?
A lot can be done in 1 year. You know how much time it takes to build a network. Look, we have built Africa in 6 years. The whole mobile networks in Africa will build in 6 years, and we ended up with 600-700 million subscribers. It can be done. It can be done. If what we need is the political will and the clarity of what we're trying to do. That's what we need.
Thank you, Mo Ibrahim. The same question, Betty.
Thank you very much. I think in a year, we can take some of the ideas we've shared today into concretizing into a specific initiative that must have a space for small and medium enterprises. And even if, like Ambrosio said, it's leveraging and supporting financial institutions, but it must be a vehicle that can target and extend support to small and medium enterprises that are innovating in this green space, because there's a lot of opportunity, whether it's in agriculture, whether it's in manufacturing, whether it's in the services sector, to bring together a large number of players so that you actually can demonstrate that you're investing in green growth. So we've done energy, we've done infrastructure, we've done big projects in the past, but this is something that must make a pool of resources available for small and medium enterprises and to support the local financial institutions to guarantee these investments. And I think it will really be something transformational. Thank you.
What can be done in 1 year, Commissioner Urpilainen?
I fully agree with Mo that we can do a lot. And I'm very convinced that we also shall do that. First of all, we need to have an exit strategy for COVID-19. I think that's the number one. That's the highest priority at the moment. We need to be able to deliver vaccines to Africa. We need to be able to start, or we have started already to vaccinate people, but we need to increase the speed. So we need to be faster. Then the second point is that from the European Union perspective, we have started to programming. So we have started to allocate our funding 80 billion euros, 80 billion euros. So now we are, finalizing that exercise so that all the decisions regarding programming will be taken by the end of this year. It means that 30% of our funding goes to climate-related projects. 20% goes to human development. And I fully agree with Mo that we need to give hope to people. And that's why, for instance, we are now investing more in education. We are investing more in young people because we know what is the demographic development in Africa. And without, for instance, education, young people won't have hope. So we are doing that exercise together with the financial institutions and with our member states. And of course, parallel to that, and this also relates to EIB, we are developing a new financing modalities in order to, to provide and offer financing opportunities to private sector. So we are doing all this, and I'm very sure that by the next year and when the summit is taking place, we also can see a concrete decision which has been taken.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Sakuk,
thank you.
What can be done until next spring?
For us at the African Union, after the pandemic lesson, we really, did our homework. We have the Green Recovery Action Plan that, as I said in my introductory remarks, that we developed with UNECA and the ministers of environment of Africa, AMCEN, we have the Secretariat of Ministers of Environment. It was adopted by the African Union organ. And I would like to invite my dear sister Jutta to really buy in, you know, in this initiative, the Green Recovery Action Plan. And I gave the pillars that we identify. Climate finance is very important. So for us, it's the priority because we have already got the NDCs, you know, the National Determined Contributions of Africa since 2015. Up to now, lack of climate finance. We don't have finance. We cannot implement. So it is really urgent because the intensity and the extreme intensity of disasters on the continent is very high. We saw at the beginning the video that you share with us in Mozambique, the cyclone, the way it devastated. So to us, it is really very important that we should build back better with the Green Recovery Action Plan that we elaborated with the partners. Is the implementation phase that we need because we want to, in November, when we have the COP, COP in Glasgow, at least we have something, you know, to share and to say that we have implemented it. In African Union, we have a lot of tools, but let's these tools become an action. I was just being re-elected for the second mandate, and I really want, you know, all the partners to come, give support to our member countries so that we can, you know, accelerate. We have the strategy, the blue economy strategy. So we need to implement. All these tools are available. One of the colleagues said that we have a lot of, you know, these tools, these instruments, but the instrument stays on the shelf for lack of implementation. I thank you.
Ambroise Fayol.
Well, to be very short, and because I completely agree with what previous speakers have said, and in particular, I agree with Jutta on what needs to be done. But my point would be, let's do this exercise next year. Let's do this forum next year, indeed, and I am sure you will see that we have been making a lot of progress in terms of developing partnership, in terms of developing the right and appropriate policies to develop investment in green. But you will also see a lot of projects that are in the making, and I think this is also what needs to be seen. The lot of projects that are implemented in Africa to support the green recovery is incredibly, and that makes me very optimistic.
Francisco André.
Three things. First of all, in this year is crucial for all of us. We hope to be the year of the recovery, where we start our recovery after this pandemic that hit us. And what we want to achieve, all of us, is a more resilient economy, but also more sustainable and inclusive society. And for that, we also need, especially when it comes to our two continents, more and more solidarity. That's what we have been working for in a true, honest and open partnership until now. Also, we are running against time, not only in today's panel, but we are running against time in this fight to mitigate the effects of climate change. And we really need to focus on that and never forget that by 1 second. And Jutta and Ambroise, they put it in a very straight manner. We have means, we have resources. We have been working a lot to have this new framework of capacity for investment. Now we need to use it. We need to encourage our partners, our private sector, our cooperation agencies, NGOs, everyone to use this means to invest, to use today's breakout sessions, for instance, where we'll have a capacity to host dialogues between all the private entrepreneurs and partners that want. It's important to keep this dialogue not only at our level, but to keep this open dialogue for all the interested parties. And last word, just to thank you and all the panelists for joining in this initiative. And I agree with Ambroise, the challenge is to meet again in 1 year and see what happened until then, what happened so far. Thank you.
Until then, I hope to meet you all again in radio interviews at TSF Radio News, let's say. It was a great honor and a great pleasure to moderate this panel, and I will give back the floor to Paulo Dentinho.
Thank you all for this fruitful and positive discussion. It gives us hope. Now, it's time to have a coffee break. Don't go away. We will be back in 15 minutes.
This is our world, the world we want to share with future generations. It's everyone's responsibility to take action in a concerted, global and urgent response to the planet's sustainable development. In fighting extreme poverty, inequalities, climate change or fragility, we are contributing to peace and security and preventing global phenomena such as refugee crises or terrorism. We are also creating development opportunities for all. The 2030 Agenda seeks to address these concerns in a comprehensive and truly universal way, based on 17 Sustainable Development Goals. These goals are each and everyone's responsibility. To reach them, we need to work together as one. Portugal took up the challenge, defining partnerships with other development players as a priority, be it with public, private, national or international entities. This is the way to develop structural and larger projects and achieve greater impact together with our partner countries. Working jointly with the European Union through instruments such as delegated cooperation, trust funds or the External Investment Plan is instrumental for Portugal. Our financial contribution to the EU's external action instruments shows our engagement towards this effort. The new European Consensus on Development brought a new impetus to this commitment. With a shared vision on development, Portugal's joint work with the EU harnesses the best of its national expertise and technology with the profound knowledge of its partner countries, ensuring greater effectiveness and visibility of our action. Portugal has been actively promoting European projects in the Portuguese-speaking African countries and in Timor-Leste, building on the synergies with its own bilateral cooperation programs, its financial support to Portuguese NGOs, or its contributions to multilateral organizations. Portuguese cooperation has been widening its area of intervention to other regions of strategic relevance. This is why our development agency has been administering a growing number of projects on behalf of the European Union, a testimony of its skill and added value on the ground. By stimulating wealth generation projects, we are creating opportunities for a range of national operators, central and local authorities, civil society, academia and private sector, while contributing to the attainment of the 2030 Agenda. Supporting sustainable development is to invest in our world.
Camões, Instituto da Cooperação e da Língua.